I'm Jeni Klugman from the Georgetown Institute for Women, Peace and Security, and I'm very happy to share the update of the Women, Peace and Security Index we launched at the United Nations last year, together with the Peace Research Institute of Oslo. What I'll share today is a short overview, flagging the main headlines and aiming to show how the index can be useful to you and to your work. Let me start by explaining what's in the index. This picture portrays the three broad dimensions of inclusion, justice, and security. And it shows the structure, that the three dimensions are equally weighted, that inclusion has multiple aspects, including economic, social, and political indicators, that our justice dimension includes both formal as well as informal norms and injustice, and security is measured at the household, community, and societal levels. And all of our indicators can be traced back to goals and indicators that have been agreed to by member states in the Sustainable Development Goals. So let's cut to the chase. What did we find? In our second edition of the index, Norway leads the world and Yemen was in last place. Indeed, all of the bottom dozen countries here, shown in red, are also classified by the World Bank as fragile and conflict-affected states. However, even the highest ranking countries tend to perform poorly on at least one indicator. So for example, Norway ranks only in the middle range for women's paid employment. This map shows the spectrum of performance around the world and where countries fall. You can see that there's an enormous amount of variation, the lighter colors indicating poorer performance. And if you have a chance to download the report, and I'll show the URL at the end of the presentation, you can see the rankings and scores on each indicator at the back of the report. And what you see as well is that while there are clear regional variations, there's also significant variation within each region, as shown on this slide. And you can see that the biggest range indeed emerges in the Eastern and Central European and Central Asia region, between Estonia, which is actually in the top dozen, and Azerbaijan, which ranks 123rd. And we look behind these results to see what's driving performance. And echoing what the UNDP and the Human Development Report has underlined for many years, money matters, but it's not the whole story. And this slide shows countries which either do much better or much worse than their per capita income rank. So for example, Saudi Arabia plummets 108 places on our index relative to its per capita income ranking. We also, in the second edition of the report, look behind the national rankings for three large countries, China, India, and Nigeria. And indeed, in each of those large countries, there was significant diversity across the country behind the national averages. And in Nigeria, we found the largest gaps between the north of the country, where women did much worse than those living in the southern parts. We're just about to launch a new index, indeed tomorrow on October the 8th, looking at subnational rankings for the United States. We've ranked all 50 states plus the District of Columbia. I can't share the details now due to a press embargo, but I can say that the state in which a woman lives determines many things in terms of her opportunities for employment, her ability to have protection from the law in very fundamental aspects, including protection from an abusive partner, as well as whether or not she can take paid time off for caregiving. And of course, these gender disparities are compounded by racial injustice in the United States. But going back to the global report, what we did in the second edition was look at trends over time. And we found indeed significant good news. And Yemen was the only country which was significantly worse off in 2019 relative to 2017. But I do want to flag that progress is often way too slow. We did see progress in terms of financial inclusion, and that was indeed welcome, although often from a very low base, as you can see in the slide here. Likewise, across other aspects, we saw very slow progress and indeed regression on important indicators. So for example, the share of women who are in paid employment actually fell over the 2 years between 2017 and 2019. And this, of course, predated the COVID crisis. Women's parliamentary representation is pretty much stalled. And in conflict-affected countries in particular, levels of financial inclusion for women remain very low. We show here the variations in women's paid employment, for example, where you can see significant gaps. One country which attracted a lot of attention was Myanmar, which indeed fell 31 places, became the lowest ranked country in East Asia and the Pacific. And this was due to clearly high levels of organized violence, which affected the country, in particular the Rohingya people, as well as high rates of violence in the community and chronic problems like low levels of political representation, despite the fact that they have a female president, prime minister. The share of women in parliament remains below 12%. So what we do in the last chapter of the report, and I encourage you all to download and read, is to link the performance on the index to broader aspects of the Sustainable Development Goals. So for example, to child mortality, to promoting peace more broadly, as well as justice. And we're very glad to see that the media pickup has been significant of the report. And the slide here illustrates some of the outlets which have devoted space and attention to the findings and in particular the rankings. A number of governments have cited the index as well, including Norway, as well as Canada, Poland and the UK. And we also see references by multilateral and regional organizations, not least the UN, but also attention in NATO and the OSCE. We're also glad to see some traction as well in terms of academic research and the inclusion, for example, of a chapter on the index in the inaugural Oxford Handbook on Women, Peace and Security. So it's been great to have the opportunity here to raise awareness about the index and its broad value. I'd encourage you to go to the website where there are a number of useful resources. You can explore rankings and performance by country. And as I mentioned, from tomorrow, you'll be able to look at the results for the United States from October the 8th, 2020. Thanks again and all the best.